What even is good racing? This is the question I've wanted to tackle for a while and get your guys' opinion on. So today I just wanted to talk about, at its core, what makes good racing. And this will be from my perspective. So from my very American perspective, I watch NASCAR, IndyCar, Formula One. That's pretty much it. So if you watch other series and have differing opinions, I would love to hear them in the comments below. But in order to determine what good racing is, I have broken it down into inputs and outputs. So I want to take this kind of backwards and use those outputs as goals that we want to achieve, and then find some inputs and how they affect them, and then come to a conclusion what are some of the most important things for good racing. So I have 5 main outputs. Some of them are kind of similar, but we're going to start with how easy is it to pass? I think passing is one of the universal ways to track how good a race is. And I think that's pretty accurate because on track passing, you're not going to get much more entertaining than that in races, because that's the whole point of a race. If you just have cars driving by themselves, that's just going to be time trialing pretty much. So if passing is easy, that makes a good race, but it has to also be passes that mean something, in my opinion. The second output that I think that is important and probably the most similar to passing is car proximity. How close are cars driving to each other? I think that this is very important for the pure visual aspect, maybe not quite the racing aspect, but when you are watching a race, you expect to see multiple cars in the frame, or else we could just be watching qualifying for all we know. Having multiple cars in the frame going side by side at times even helps with the sense of speed when we're watching broadcasts, which a lot of TV companies seem to struggle with conveying that just jaw-dropping sense of speed that you would see in real life. The next output is a late addition, but the more that I think about it, the more important that I believe it to be, and that is lack of control. I think that when we see these professional race car drivers not fully in control of their car in a race, I think that is peak entertainment. Whether it be with getting into slides and having to save them, or just watching something like rallycross or rally where the cars are just constantly out of whack in the entire run. I think that that type of stuff is really entertaining because that's not really something that the average person will ever experience driving a car. Next, I think that strategy is very important for good racing and definitely one of the most important outputs because it has a sort of drama, a sort of uncertainty where somebody's strategy could fail at any given moment or they could pull something out of thin air because of their strategy. It's always bringing an idea of something could possibly happen, so I gotta keep watching. And finally, probably my most controversial output, but maybe not. I think that good racing should always have a deserving winner. So if you are watching a race and somebody just randomly who doesn't deserve it wins the race, we might as well be watching a lottery, right? I think that it's fair for the drivers and fair for the viewers if at least a person who is deserving, not the best. I don't think that the best car should win every time, but I think that the winner should be deserving of that victory. And obviously it's very fun to have underdog winners, but when that starts happening too much, it kind of dilutes what it means to win a race. So I think that the majority of the time, the winner should be the car that deserves it because it makes everything else more worthy, more special. So now let's move on to the factors or the inputs that lead to the outputs or the goals that we were talking about. And I think that the most important input, and I'm probably not going to get much argument here, is the drivers. I think that if you have good drivers, aggressive drivers willing to put on a show, they can make anything look good. Well, just about. If you put just another guy in Fernando Alonso's seat, there probably wouldn't be half the crazy passes that he made in his position. And the second important factor I think we're going to be moving on to the car is going to be tires. I think that tire fall off, tire wear, tire differences are what contribute to the vast majority of these things that make good racing. So with tire fall off, if you have to save tires over the course of a run, that accounts for strategy. You're going to be easy to pass at the beginning of a run, but you'll be able to pass people easily at the end of a run. And especially in NASCAR, where there's a lot of tire fall off sometimes, in Formula One with the different compounds, you'll see strategy like that take place. Having tire fall off also helps with having a deserving winner because the person who manages their tires the best over the course of a run is the deserving winner. And with the lack of control, That's another thing that tires help with, because with fall off, you're going to have a really out of control car that's just not so fast and probably sliding all over the place. Very entertaining to watch. Building on that, another input with the car is going to be its aerodynamics. So its aerodynamics are usually working against good racing, in my opinion, because you're going to have something called dirty air that you've probably heard me talk about a lot. And dirty air works against a lot of these things. The only thing that helps is close proximity of racing. So you'll probably get like a draft train, as people like to call it, where you can keep up with somebody, but you can't really pass them because of the bad aerodynamics in the corners. You see this in pretty much all racing. The aero wash is a very common problem to have with modern race cars, because how are you going to get that downforce without just screwing up the air for everyone behind you? So the solution to this might be to actually take away downforce, because what does taking away downforce do? Well, it probably makes the car harder to control, so that's a good thing. It probably makes it easier to pass because more people are making mistakes. That's a good thing. And there's probably going to be more strategy, because how are you going to manage the lack of downforce over the course of a run? That's also a good thing. So in my opinion, I think taking away downforce in pretty much every series out there is going to make things more interesting. And the next input that I want to talk about, and how can we avoid it, is wrecks. I think wrecks overall contribute to a lot of races in a positive way. And if you say, man, that's kind of a crazy take, that's kind of a take that's a little dangerous, I probably agree with you. But at the end of the day, what is the on-track product? We see with Formula One, a lot of races are saved by a safety car mixing things up. In NASCAR, everyone's at least used to that late race caution creating drama at this point. So basically, having crashes makes the races more random. It makes it more incentivized to watch towards the end. And at the end of the day, it makes it more entertaining. Where having a crash like that takes away from the race, though, is when we stop getting deserving winners because of a crash, right? And finally, for my last main factor, I want to talk about engineering and innovation, because I think a lot of the time innovation works as sort of a detractor to entertaining racing. And we've kind of seen that with NASCAR and Formula One going two different ways. NASCAR has been making their cars more spec in an effort to make cars more like each other, race closer to each other. Whereas Formula One, yes, they've been having the salary caps and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, you can spend a lot of money to find a lot of innovation, really, really cool stuff that they do, but Max Verstappen is going to win the race by 30 seconds every race because of it. And to that point, I think that Formula One's appeal is just as much being the pinnacle of racing as it is having a good on-track product. So I don't think they should take it away, for example, but I think that's a reason that you see better racing in lower levels of open wheel racing, and even over at like IndyCar. I think IndyCar has a much better on-track product than Formula One in general, and that's because IndyCar, again, is going more spec than Formula One. But would I recommend Formula One go spec like IndyCar? There's no way. That's just not the identity of Formula One. You have the engineering and the innovation to make the best race cars in the world, for better or worse. And so the final, definitely most controversial solution to creating good racing is gimmicks. Yes, there are tons of gimmicks that have made their way into pretty much every motorsport at this point, whether it be stage racing and planned cautions in NASCAR, IndyCar having push to pass as a system, and then Formula One having DRS zones. All of those things are trying to artificially create easier to pass, closer racing, more strategy, something like that. There's a goal for every one of them. And with these gimmicks, that's very controversial on, is it even real racing anymore? And that's not even to mention the playoffs. Man, don't even get me started on the playoffs. But anyways, I want to hear from you guys. What makes good racing? And what could the current top series of motorsports do to promote that good racing? All right, thank you all for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you all on the track.